Herman, welcome back. I mean,
Hey,
you've been on these podcasts so many times, so it's lucky to have you back. And I think that the conversation that we're going to have
mm,
today is going to make for interesting content to our listeners and our viewers. And we're also
yes.
joined by Dr. Preyan Arumugam,
Mm.
the senior research scientist at the University of KZN. Welcome, Preyan.
Hi, Willem. Hi, Herman. Nice to be here.
Hi there. Hi, Willem. Yeah, thanks. It's good to be to be back for a change. Um, and I almost said what I shouldn't, but it's interesting topics we're talking about today. We love that.
We are in the plumbing
Yes.
industry, Herman. So, the topic, we may just as well say it. We're talking about sewage and sanitation today. So
That is very politely put. Very politely put. Thanks.
there's a word that we can use for it, but let's rather not.
Not today.
Herman, so basically what it boils down to is that, when we speak of, as the PRB, the professional body for plumbers in South Africa, we
Mm.
constantly try to enforce continuous professional development.
Mm.
And one of the reasons why we do that is that there's constantly new stuff coming into the market. There's constantly change. There's constantly, a regulation or a standard may change, or there may be new products, or there may be new methods of doing things. There may be new tools to use. But it boils down to, when it comes to those kind of things, new tools, new products, those kind of things, it boils down to the fact that there's constantly innovation.
Yes.
And innovation brings forth stuff like improvement,
Absolutely.
convenience,
Mhm.
because we innovate stuff to make stuff
Yeah.
more convenient for us, like a TV remote,
Mm.
so we don't have to
Yes.
get up and change the
Yeah.
channels at the TV. And then also, innovation brings forth possibility, because it can make things that were previously impossible,
Oh,
can make
yes.
it can make it possible.
See, I think that is why it is so exciting, this topic. It is so exciting to talk about sanitation. When you say new innovations comes along, sometimes it's something fancy. We like to play with it, and sometimes, but once in a while, something comes along that is a game changer, that changes the lives of people across the board. Often people don't realize that this, when the people start seeing this, it's new. Oh, look at this fancy thing. Often it's something that came a very long way, that a lot of effort and energy went into getting to the point. And within the sanitation industry, we're at that point at the moment.
Mm.
There are fantastic new developments, a fantastic new direction that things are going into. Some big changes is in the process of happening, and it's exciting. It's exciting to know about that.
It's interesting to think, because consumers, the average consumer out there, the average member of public out there, would never, unless they have a family member that may be a plumber that works in the
Mm.
plumbing industry, they may never know how complex plumbing, the industry and the trade, can
Yes.
be, as well as what kind of technology the
That's
plumbers,
correct. Mm.
that they see and hear of, and that they have to use and install, and those kind of things. It's interesting because you would never associate technology with plumbing.
Yes. For me, it's what I experience and what I found a lot of people experience. What is the level of technology that the average person understand when we talk about sanitation? They see the nice white throne. I do what I do there. I flash the handle, and it's gone. It's fantastic.
Hmm.
Um,
It's almost a miracle.
It's a miracle. It's gone. Guess what? That's not gone.
It has to go. It has to go somewhere.
It has to go somewhere. It needs to. Something happens, and there's a lot that happens in that place. Just one. Let me quick exercise. In your area where you stay. So think where you stay. Okay. Now, do you know where is the closest sewage treatment plant?
Personally,
Happen to know. So
even
go and find it.
though I work in the plumbing industry, no, I don't. I
So
don't know where the nearest sewage plant is.
Let's put a challenge out there. Anybody, wherever you are listening to this podcast, after this, go find the sewage plant. If you don't know where it is, you'll find it. Google Maps, you can see the images. There's enough ways to find it. Then you take a drive from your house to that sewage plant. Drive there. Take a reading. How many kilometers do you have to drive to get there? Now understand, when you use the white throne at home, there's a connection, pipe connection, all the way from your house to that sewage plant. It's not a small distance. It's a long distance. Yes, maybe it doesn't follow the road. There might be some shorter lines, but it's a long distance. Now, second thing you think of is you flush the toilet with, I don't know how much water were there in the toilet bowl. That's the medium that pushes everything now down to the sewage plant. I mean, is that enough water to get it all of those kilometers down the line?
You think to yourself, what is that, 9 liters or 8 liters?
Yes,
to properly flush?
Typically, you can have a few arguments, but typically it's 9 liters that you do.
And to think that has to let the sanitation, the sewage, flow all those kilometers with all the corners that it has to take to finally get to
the plant. And that's just getting to the plant. So now the systems are developed so that it's more than just that one flush that eventually gets you down there. There's a lot of water required. And remember, this is infrastructure. It's under the ground. It goes nowhere. You can't build a residential area without that under the ground.
Yeah,
without it there.
That reticulation.
And you can't change it. Not easily in any case. So that's there. Now it arrives at the plant. So what happens at the plant? I mean, let's not go through the whole process, but it is a big energy intensive process. I know that Dr. Preyan, I mean, she's worked with those type of plants. There's environments quite a lot more, and she's got much more detailed information. But I mean, there's it's a number of steps that it goes through: rough filtration, smaller filtration, biological treatment, cleaning the water, getting it back. So it takes energy, it takes human resources, it takes huge infrastructure to clean this up, so that it can be released safely back into the environment. I don't know if you've got a comment or something to add on that.
I think that really sums it up about the flush and forget type of ideology that we have when we look at sanitation. But you're right, with the current conventional wastewater treatment works and how it is designed to be, it is always that you flush, you never really worry as a user where that waste is going to. But I think Herman sums it up really well in terms of what are the challenges we're currently facing, and especially from a plumbing point of view, and the mechanisms and the skills that it requires to actually have a functional system and a sustainable system. Yeah. So we're in a very challenging era in terms of providing safely managed sanitation, but there are alternatives. So yeah, happy to discuss them further.
It's very, very interesting that you're saying that there are alternatives, because besides the actual infrastructure and the complexity thereof that needs to be installed, we're speaking of sewer reticulation, not only the sanitation system at a house or at a building or a premises, but then also the sewer reticulation, municipal sewer reticulation that it connects to, just to get it all the way to the treatment plant. But then all the technicalities and all the resources and the infrastructure and the processes and the chemicals and the finances needed and the technical skills and knowledge and even the scientific skills and knowledge required for sewage to be treated at a plant so that it can eventually be discarded off somewhere safely and as hygienically as it possibly can. Yes. So there's so many intricacies and complexities that and like you said, a lot of challenges, because sometimes the infrastructure can break. Sometimes there cannot be I know from previous experience that we did a condition assessment at a a sewage treatment plant, that those filters, what do you call it in Afrikaans, a sif of those filters that had to alternate to catch the solids before it goes through the rest of the stuff, those two the mechanisms broke, and the municipality didn't have funds to fix it. So the treatment plant manager fixed it with his own salary. He went and purchased materials. He brought a welder, tried his best, but he could only do so much with his own resources, his own personal salary to fix it. And then eventually it broke again, and it broke again. And the more he requested finances from the municipality to fix it, the more they said to him, but there isn't currently financial resources. Eventually, both of those grids, those filters, were lifted up because of the fact that the mechanisms were broken, which meant that at that sewer plant, all the solids just flew right through into the rest of the process. So we're looking at there's a lot of challenges, unplanned, planned, unexpectedly, that can happen when it comes to just getting the sewerage to the plant, but then at the plant itself. And then I go back to what Dr. Preyan was saying, is that there are alternatives. And that's like, what? There are alternatives? There's like, you mean there can be an innovation or a technology or a method or a solution to it that we can skip that? Because if that's the case, I would be very keen and interested to hear where that can be applied. Because I mean, we've got communities where we can't even install infrastructure to. We've got communities that don't have the reticulation that leads up to the settlement, so that they can install toilets and have a flushing toilet to connect to the muse. So I'd love to hear about that.
I think, Dr. Preyan, if you can maybe give us, let's start with the background of it. I mean, there's been a vision, the Reinvent the Toilet project that were established, that were funded. Would you care to tell us a bit more about that?
So you would have noticed I used the term alternative, right? Because as much as we have all of these challenges with conventional wastewater treatment works, in some situations it does work, and we shouldn't negate that. I mean, it is very, what we need to look at when we're looking at sanitation, there's no one fit for all type of solution. So with the alternatives that we had, and this was just really an initiative that was initiated by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, whereby the emphasis was to provide safely managed sanitation. But because of all of the challenges with conventional wastewater treatment works, the emphasis was that, can we treat waste on site? And it started in 2008, and there were various toilet fairs that were hosted to reinvent the toilet. And often when you think of reinventing the toilet, you just think that it's the user interface, what the user actually comes into contact with the users. But really, it speaks to full treatment on site. And this is really where the Reinvent Toilet born out of. And it has been, initiated in many countries. I think the invitation just went out to on a global scale, and the feedback that we got was mainly from universities, research institutes, existing manufacturers that were already in the sanitation space, but were up to the challenge of providing a more functional and sustainable system. Herman?
Yeah, so if just clarity, so I understand. So the Gates Foundation had the vision, they set the rules, and they basically set a challenge worldwide. So there were large organizations, different organizations worldwide that tried to come up with ideas, tried to go through processes to, as I say, we don't know what the answer is, but let's get somewhere. Let's try to create something. Let's try to reinvent it, get away from that. And I think the key element that you mentioned is on-site. If you can take away the need to transport this to a sewage treatment plant far out of the way, and you can treat it much more effective. There were a lot more rules in this, or let's say a lot more targets in this program relating to efficiency and possible reuse and all of those things. So the challenge went out funding went out to a lot of organizations, and something became of it. One step in this process was creating an international standard for what this toilet should be, what this new unsewered sanitation toilet should be. So today, I mean, the standard is published, ISO 3500 30500. It is adopted in South Africa as a SANS
Standard.
30500. So the standard is there. Through all of the development that happened over time, through lessons learned and so on, a new process about 2 years ago, if I recall correctly, the process started again to revise this standard, to revise it, to go through it, and to say what changes can we make? How do we implement the lessons already learned and add it into the standard to give better guidance to developers, test and certification bodies in order to do this. So this process started. I think we had both Dr. Preyan and myself were part of the South African team that represented South Africa at this ISO meeting to help contribute to this process. We had our last meeting beginning of this year, January, in China, where the last meeting in the series has been held. And following that meeting, you can expect the new revision of the standard to be published sometime later this year.
So we're speaking of the standard
Yes.
that's already existing, and I hear you keep referring to the word "this toilet" and what this toilet should look like. And yes, the phrase that was used for this project or this dream or this vision, the phrase that is used is "reinvent the toilet." So it comes back to the word toilet. Dr. Preyan used the sentence that she said, the thought and the concept was to have on-site treatment.
Yes.
So immediately, as a lay person who's not involved in this project, this dream, or this vision, I would think to myself, okay, does that mean that there's going to be a sewer treatment happening? So from the toilet through the pipes, it goes into some little a pond or a dam or something, and a treatment plant that's at a person's home. That was the initial thought. But when the two of you keep referring to this toilet, what does that mean? Does that mean that this toilet is going to do the treatment in itself, this innovation, or does it from this toilet, the sewage go to a machine or something that's on site? What does this concept look like?
If you'll allow me.
Yes, please.
That is really the misconception that we have, I think, with a general user or a layman when we speak about these types of systems. I mean, if you look at on-site sanitation, the septic tank has been around. It's one of the most archaic on-site sanitation system, but it doesn't provide full treatment because often you have to have either a soak pad or some type of evapotranspiration happening, and it goes into the immediate environment and it's not always usually fully treated. What we wanted with this particular type of system, and the term is a non-sewage sanitation system specific to the standard, is that this back-end treatment process. So it does incorporate the front end, so what we would normally refer to as the toilet. But the main component of this non-sewage sanitation system is the back-end treatment process and the unit that facilitates the treatment of the waste on site. So maybe just a little bit of context around that. The idea was that because it's on site, it could be potentially within the household. It would be designed sort of like an appliance, similarly to how you would have a dishwasher for your dishes, washing machine for your laundry, etc. You would have a non-sewage sanitation system that would treat your waste on site. And we have some pictures showing you some of the these novel systems at the household level with a smaller back-end treatment process at the end. But then when you have biological processes integrated into it, it also extends the size of the back-end treatment process. And then we have some bigger ones that ideally would be either outside the household, or if it's at a community scale in a how you would see a shipping container, etc. So there's quite a bit of innovation that has been brought into it with the help of the standard being a design specification to assist these manufacturers with getting them up to spec. But really the innovation was to try to design a system that could fully treat the waste on site, not necessarily negating the need for drainage. Obviously, you would need to drain the waste from the toilet facility down to the back end process, but that it doesn't require connections to the municipal sewer. So that was really the innovation behind these. Herman, I'll hand it over to you for more.
Yeah, no, I think I think what makes it interesting and the way in which this project was launched, it was designed in such a way that there could be innovation, that people shouldn't be stuck on a specific idea. So you rightly say for the consumer, it's a toilet. What really happens, there's a front end and a back end. The part the consumer see, the back end is where the real business happens. The back end, there's different options, and we don't know what extra options might come along still.
Yes.
If I very, very, very broadly categorize it, there's generally two types. The one, as you said, biological, which is essentially the same process that happens in the current sewer treatment plants, but on a much smaller scale. Much smaller scale. And then there's like a incinerator process where it gets treated and everything burns, so there's nothing alive comes out of it. Okay, I oversimplify this now. There's lots of nuances and things in between. And then also we've seen some systems where there's a small system, front end with a small back end fitted to that, as you said, size of a dishwasher or something. And there are larger ones like putting down a container, prefabricating everything in a container, put it down in a community, connecting that container to a set of 3 or 4 front ends, for instance, or sometimes the front ends are built into the container.
Yeah.
So you basically build it in a factory, put it down on a premises, and it works. Again, there's so many derivatives coming out of that. We've seen projects where reuse. Understand? I mean, nature is built to recycle. Even human waste can be recycled.
Don't
oversimplify.
A weird thought to think of it that way, but yes, I've heard of it.
Potentially, it can be within a safe environment and so on. And there are projects drawing energy from that, drawing fertilizers, drawing. Yes, so I think the exciting part is there's a lot of new work still continuing, new ideas being flushed out. But there's been a milestone.
Yeah, but before we get to that milestone, and I also wanted to ask Dr. Preyan, just before I ask her, I would ask her just now what University of KZN's involvement was and the kind of work that they've been doing in this, this vision, this dream, and this project, if we can, for a lack of better terms, refer to it as a project. But before we get to that, again, as a layperson, I would ask to myself, all right, if you're saying that there's a process that happens within the back end, where you referred to, and I laughed at it when you said the back end where the real business happens.
Yes.
I had a good chuckle about that, because we're doing our business in the front end, and then the real concern is, if you're saying to me that there's a solution alternative to pushing that sewage back into the sanitation from your premises, and then let that connect to the municipal sewage reticulation. What, just one concept, you used the word incineration, and you said that you don't want to oversimplify it, but that to me says that waste can then get burned so that only ashes is left of it, and that's safe to chuck in your garden or in your dustbin. Is that without we oversimplifying it, but obviously there's more to it. But does that boil down to one thought of how this back end can work and the process that happens in it? And you saying then there can be more added to it because it's open for innovation. It's open for people.
Yes. At the moment, the sky's the limit. Honestly, I think the most progress that has been made in the systems that's closest to being ready for mass production fall within these categories. we are, due to the nature of what we do, we can't talk about everything that we really see. There are, and you will understand that where a company puts in the resources, the energy, the research for that, that company must be rewarded through a normal business process. And a fair measure of confidentiality is critical in that sense.
Yes.
One of the reasons why we're trying to oversimplify it, but the message the message is we don't have to get into the detail. The message is in the general indication, the general thought.
But you said a company or whoever gets involved, and I know that you and I'm not sure if Dr. Preyan attended the event with you, where you attended an event in China where they exhibited some of these products or whatever, or the concepts thereof, and you said one of the challenges of that is getting different people from different countries with different perceptions and different mindsets, all giving their inputs, and one of the challenges was do these people understand each? Because if this person says something in this language, it has a different interpretation in that language. And to get to that standard that you said, how this thing should probably look like and what it should function and should be able to do, that in itself was a complex process.
Yes, Willem, that was actually quite a good experience, to be honest. I think this is what we referred to earlier, the ISO meeting, or part of the International Standards Organization, part of the meeting that reviewed the standard 3500 and so on. As I mentioned, Dr. Preyan and myself, we also had a colleague, Dick Hang from the SABS, that joined us in the grouping there. But what basically happened at this, there was, I think, 30 odd countries represented. Maybe we can show the photo of everybody that were there somewhere on the screen. But it's a big grouping. It is experts from all over the world that participated, that contribute to this process. And effectively what happens is you argue, you discuss, you debate what the requirement should be. Should you change it? You also understand that some of the nuances of writing a standard, sometimes different words are interpreted differently. Just for explanation, we actually, and I'm not making this one up, we had a half an hour discussion about whether you should use the phrase backup power or redundant power. So for us, it was obvious. I mean, how can you even think about that? But different cultures, different viewpoints, different languages translate differently. We had a half an hour discussion before they figured out the correct terminology that is technically the safest to use is to refer to backup power. And still people had different opinions on that just because of their perspective.
Yeah.
So that's about a simple topic like that. You can imagine when it gets into the details, the nitty-gritties of the technologies and so on. So a big part is talking about that. A large part of dealing in the standard is about the methodology of testing, to make sure that tests are repeatable, that they actually give the results you want, so that tests can't be manipulated. Focusing on what is important in this, what needs to be tested and what not. But now we need to get to the good part, because as part of this function, so maybe I must first say that the standard has been written, but there's no product that's ever complied with it. It is a pie in the sky. It was let's try to get something that complies with that. And there were a lot of talk that said, you know what, maybe this ain't never going to happen. The requirements are too tight. It's not feasible. It's not reasonable. At this meeting, at the same event where this was hosted, one of the evenings, they actually announced the certification of the first commercially available non-sewer toilet system. So the certification body, TÜV-SÜD, that works internationally, big offices in China and Germany, they've tested the EcoSan system as manufactured in China. That got tested through this rigorous process. They received certification, or the first company that are ever certified for compliance to the standard. Over and above that, there was another system on display. It's not in a commercial environment yet. It was developed by the Cranfield University in UK. I understand that they still continue developing that. But for everybody at this conference, we were encouraged to come and use the systems. Now imagine that we in this fancy hotel, in the conference room, there's 2 toilets set up in the middle of the conference room, not connected to any of the sewers. In the middle of a high-level conference room, there's 2 toilet systems set up, and everybody is encouraged, come and use it, come and use it. They made sure that your privacy is taken care of. We won't talk about stage fright, but I think we all did our part in checking whether these systems were functioning, working. But it is a fantastic, fantastic milestone. It feels so wrong and so fantastic to be able to use a toilet in the middle of a conference room, knowing that whatever happens, it is that products are treated safely without the need to connect it to the main sewer or anything, and it's happening. It's there. The milestone is there. And the development, it can only grow from here. It put a peck in the sand where it was previously thought that this is a pie in the sky, it's never going to happen. It's happening. It's there. It can now develop into better systems, into more efficient systems, into more cost-effective. Lots that happen. That's going to happen from this going forward. And more development you can expect. But the first significant milestone has been reached. And I mean, I know Dr. Preyan and them at the university. First, I must say that before I give her time to speak, because she ain't going to say it herself. I was so humbled and proud at the same time to see how well Dr. Preyan, UKZN are respected within this international community. So many times in the standard where the world experts debate this, they would turn to her and say, but give us your feedback, give us your insight. We know the work that you've been doing on this. So it is amazing to know that you and your team from South Africa played such a significant role in the standard, and not only the standard, but the development leading up to
the innovation thereof,
up to getting things actually there.
But I'd like to hear more about it, Dr. Preyan.
Thank you. We originally joined the toilet fair as a competitor with our own toilet. But because we had so much of experience with characterizing waste, and when you do treatment, often there's improper characterization of the waste, and then the treatment system is not properly designed. And hence you get a system failure. So we had a lot of experience, spanning decades, looking at fecal sludge characterization, urine, waste, domestic wastewater, etc. So based on that experience, we were signaled out as a test partner, that whatever innovation that came out from the global space would be then tested in Durban. So we had originally started this off as the engineering field testing platform, where many of these early prototypes that were developed were tested under real life conditions here in South Africa. And that just provided valuable insight to us as an independent test body, but also to the manufacturers themselves to understand the complexity of their systems, understand what it is like to serve these specific communities. Usually it was informal settlements, and almost everything goes down the toilet. So it was dealing with that, dealing with the acceptability issues. One of the main impacts of the standard, besides the sustainability criteria, was user acceptability. And often toilets are not designed according to cultural specifications. So that was an important lesson. So yeah, I'm laughing because Herman knows I had my boxing gloves during all of these meetings, because it becomes quite challenging. I mean, you sit in a room of sometimes academics, and you are fighting this thing about either the standard without losing its integrity, but being, feasible and being something that we can test against. So yeah, we were quite happy with some of the changes that have been implemented based on what we have learned from South Africa, and having that hands-on experience. I mean, a significant thing with the standard is it's super long, to put it plainly, and there's so many test requirements, and it essentially boils down to cost. And with the cost of certification being so high, it sort of deters manufacturers away from certifying their products. But we were quite chuffed with the certification of the one of the systems that is manufactured in China. In fact, we had tested it in South Africa and it failed. So it was interesting. Only because it is and that's where the cultural aspects. The system is designed for washers, and as you know, with us, we use toilet paper. And it failed on that complexity, and also on the parts, because it was designed and manufactured in China. Bringing it over, it was not durable to our climate, as well as availability of parts was almost impossible. So bearing on that lessons, it was a valuable program to go under, providing that space for manufacturers to come in, access to the communities. It is not always easy for manufacturers to get this firsthand experience and having to test their systems with communities themselves. So that was a good experience for us. So that is where UKZN was. I would say now we want to move forward with some of the technology innovation. There was a lot of lessons that we've learned. And although we want to continue with providing testing services, we see a lot of gaps. Ultimately, we are academics, we are researchers, and we want to enhance some of the processes that have come out that can be applied. The main context being affordable solutions.
Yeah, because my next question would then be, if this milestone has been reached, we've got a standard. One of the products is commercially available. It's met the standard, or it's been tested against the standard. What does that mean to South Africa now? Because I mean, we've got, like you said, rightfully, that we've got communities where they don't have access to that municipal infrastructure where they have proper sanitation or sewage removal or something like that. And one would immediately think, oh, wow, if there's a commercially available product, then we can immediately go and install this left, right, and center at all these communities, So is that the case? Or certainly you mentioned that there are challenges to face, funding and those kind of things. What does this mean to South Africa?
We have a few commercially available products, and it has been piloted in South Africa. But I think the main kickback is that, one, it's too expensive. It's still too expensive, especially for municipalities. I mean, if you look at informal settlements, there's no revenue generation that are coming out of informal settlements. Municipalities would have to provide the funding, the capital expenditure to source out those systems, but also for the operation and maintenance costs that are borne out of the municipalities. And that is quite challenging, especially for most metros, but also the local and district municipalities as well. So, and hence I ended off before with the term affordable, because what we need to provide with South Africa is, as much as we have all of this innovation, it has to be sustainable, it has to be affordable and cost effective for the implementing agent, whether it's a municipality or an estate, etc., but also to the user themselves if it's at a household level. Yeah, so that's some of the main challenges that I'm finding. But Herman can also say,
I think, bear with me for 1 minute. Let me use an analogy from a different world, from a different environment, just to explain why to me it is this exciting, well, not to me, to everybody, why this is this exciting milestone. So in the automotive industry, 30 years back, electric cars we knew it can happen, but it's a pie in the sky.
Yeah.
Today, they're everywhere. They, even in South Africa, they become more popular and affordable. As you say, affordability. What made the difference? It now becomes more affordable to use them. That's why they are growing. What were the difference? What were the milestones that changed that? And again, please, I know if you delve into the histories, there's many different things. But for the average person, the change was the Toyota Prius. I mean, prior to the Toyota Prius, electric cars were pie in the sky idea. For some reason, they decided, let's build this thing. I mean, there was such a lot of criticism against it because it's so expensive to make. It's actually not affordable. It actually made more damage to the environment than not. I'm not saying it does. I'm talking about the arguments that's being used.
Yes.
It was very expensive. We've heard how much money they've lost on it rather than making money and so on. But what did it do? It put a product on the market, something that people started using, started selling. They say, wait a minute, this could be possible. This is something in the right direction.
It basically became a pioneer.
It's a catalyst. It's a
catalyst.
catalyst, a pioneer. It put a stake in the ground to say, this can be done. From there, it were improved. Things were improved, different models, new things, to up to today where it is now. So within the sanitation industry, that stake has now been put in the ground. There is something. There's something that's been certified, something that's there. There's products out there. The more one use that, the more it gets. It can now go into the process. As you say, a lot of the work now is also into making it affordable. How do you get it affordable in a sustained and a safe way?
Yes.
Be very realistic. In the next 5 years, it's not going to change our lives in the next 5 years, most likely. Longer than that, things going to change. 10 years from now, I think it might already be quite a different landscape.
You said it rightfully that this milestone with this first commercially available solution, product, or alternative, that's a milestone, but that also is a catalyst or a pioneer for this technology, for this type of innovation. And one of the thoughts that I had initially is, with every new technology and every new innovation, the initial pricing of manufacturing it and setting it available and distributing it and all of those things, that's really high cost. But I've also learned that when demand increases for certain things, then the price then reduces. I take DVD players, I take flat screen TVs as an example. When the first LED TVs hit the market after plasma screens, LED TVs were extremely highly priced. Extremely highly priced. But as more people started adopting the technology in their factories and making LED TVs, and the supply and the demand, were equalized, then the prices, what I paid for my first LED TV in comparison to what you pay for the same or a bigger LED TV today, I thought to myself, why didn't I just wait 14 years? Why? Because I would have paid less than half the price for a much bigger LED TV.
But because you bought it then, there were more sales, which led to the new ones.
But exactly. So my thought is, this can happen to this kind of product and this solution, this alternative.
I think there's a big drive.
Oh, sorry. Go on, Herman.
No, I was pointing to you, just saying there's a big drive. I know that you are doing a lot of work still, and there's good things to come.
Yeah. I think, you spoke about the economies of scale, right? With the higher the demand, it decreases the manufacturer's costs over time, production costs over time, and essentially these products then become cheaper. And what we are looking at as a strategy in South Africa is that where is your revenue actually generated from a municipal point of view? It's from your ratepayers, your higher income earning communities, your affluent communities, who are more often now going into these remote areas and, buying into the green economy, buying into the sustainable type of living, and want to go completely off-grid. These types of solutions will be perfect in these scenarios because, one, they use less water, they use less energy, they are more reliable in terms of treatment, and they can actually then provide the demand to then reduce the costs for these systems for the communities who are in desperate need for sanitation. But in South Africa, the bylaws at the municipal level do not permit the introduction of these off-grid. So concurrently, we are trying to develop this model set of bylaws, and Herman is providing input, especially from the plumbing industry, from just looking at it from holistic perspective of how we can introduce this model bylaw that would allow these municipalities, because how can I say, regulate these types of systems and allow for these estates to go on, because often they're stuck in development if they cannot connect to any water and sanitation infrastructure. And that is a stumbling block. So there are a lot of, I would say, parallel things going on to ensure that we can actually implement more of these technologies to where the demand lies, so that we can essentially provide some of these solutions to where it's most needed. Herman, I'll hand it over to you.
I think she touched on something that's important within this environment. Understand, I mean, we've said it so many times, with plumbing done right saves lives. It improves lives. Plumbing done wrong, if I'm just being blunt, it kills people.
Yeah, and it can health issues and those kind of things.
So you have to be very, very cautious. We cannot drive new technologies in an irresponsible way. It has to be in a safe way. If you err on the side of caution on this, that is where the municipal bylaws and things does come in. The municipalities cannot just say, oh yes, do anything you want. There has to be proper controls and proper regulation without making it difficult, but to make sure that this actually does what it's supposed to do, make it safe, make it better for all of us without inadvertently causing any risk. Because it's new technologies, because it's some quite new areas, there's a lot of detail that you need to look into, that needs to be catered for, that's not necessarily obvious to the average plumber, obvious to the average consumer, or even obvious to the average municipality. But so that is why there's a lot of work going into that part now, to make sure that the basic infrastructure and checks and balances are in place, so that when this is introduced, it will be safe. It will do what it's supposed to do.
So having said all of that, I think that there's a lot more that can be said, and I'd love to have a follow-up podcast about this in the near future, to see what progress and development has happened since this podcast. But we've drawn to a close of this specific podcast, and having mentioned the word plumbing industry and plumbers, what words, Dr. Preyan and Herman, would you like to leave our plumbers with, our audience of registered professional plumbers, qualified plumbers? What words, what message would you like to leave them with?
Let me start, Herman. Let me start.
Yes, please go ahead.
Let me start, because I'm looking at it from my main concern from an academic and a researcher is to ensure that these systems are functional over time, right? And often these manufacturers only have a supply contract, procurement for just the system itself, and the O&M is either left to the user or owner of the system. I would think, as a plumbing industry, that for this to work, we need a complete stakeholder engagement. We need all of the role players in here. And plumbers often are not considered as the most integral component in this for the functionality of the system. And we completely disagree, because without the plumbers, these systems will not operate as it is designed to. It will not have the sustainability criteria. And I think it is very important that as more of these systems roll out, that the plumbing industry is brought in closely. So they are trained, they are aware of some of the operational and maintenance aspects of these systems, to ensure that over time, they are fully operational systems and there's continuity of services. And I think that is the main thing that I would really like to stress, that there needs to be integration in how these systems are rolled out, and the plumbing industry needs to be brought in more closely, even for advice as to how you would, improve the efficiency of these systems as well from a plumbing point of view. That's my perspective. Thank you.
So how do I follow that now?
I think she summed it up perfectly.
Not easily. That is, very, very well summarized. I think this is not one of those areas where I can tell the plumbers, go out and go study this now and do all of this. I think a big part of what she said is this is going to be critical. This is when this gets rolled out. The plumbing industry, the plumbers are going to play a big role in this.
A major role.
So watch this space. Keep your eyes out. When you see something, ask questions. Ask all around. Make sure you educate. I'm pretty sure education will come from different sides and so on. PIRB will always be here to help, guide, and put you in contact with wherever you need to be. I think the one nice thought to have is especially a lot of the young plumbers. You know what? Which camera do I talk to the young plumbers? So one day when you just about at the retiring age, you're going to turn around, you're going to tell your kids, the young oaks coming up, you're going to say, you know what happened in my lifetime? In my lifetime, they were changed from the traditional toilet systems to this brilliant system, whichever way it looks now. I'm looking forward to that.
Dr. Preyan, thanks for your inputs. Thanks for your time and your, in joining us for this conversation and the insightful information that you've shared with us. I'm really proud, Herman, I think you would agree with me, to say that, our local universities and our local experts like Dr. Preyan, yourself, are involved and actually seen and acknowledged and respected in the international market.
Taking a leading role, not just involved.
Yeah. So it's actually heartwarming. It's exciting for me to hear that, and I'm so much looking forward to see, with our next conversation, to see what has been happening since this conversation. So again, thanks for your time. Thanks for the information, Herman.
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure. I'm so humbled being able to sometime collaborate with Dr. Preyan. It's great fun. We learn a lot.
Rub shoulders with the big guns.
Yes.
We'll chat next time.
Thank you very much.